The HotPad X is the latest flagship in Cosmox's rapidly iterating controller line, with interchangeable movement, action button, and thumb modules, giving you a controller that promises to basically be your go-to for everything. This promise comes with a big price tag and big compromises. Even coming in at a lower cost than most fighting game controllers, the addition of any modules quickly raises the price, with the arcade stick module coming in at close to the price of another controller itself. The promise of swappable modules also breaks down the more frequently you exchange them, revealing many small issues that make it cumbersome in practice. If you've already got a sense for what you like, it might be more practical to have multiple controllers on hand. But let's break it down module by module. Out of the box, the HotPad X comes with a full set of low-profile or MX-style button modules, with movement, attack, and thumb modules as the default. I personally opted for the MX set because I appreciate the variety of options available in MX-style switches, but in retrospect, I'd prefer the low-profile set. Between the longer travel times and the harsh bottom out against the metal chassis, it gives a hard button press that's fatiguing over long sessions. The spacing between modules is also a bit too large for me in the leverless configuration, and a bit too cramped with arcade stick installed. It leaves everything at this kind of weird limbo where it's perfectly playable, but it's never ideal. With the analog sticks installed, you also lose the thumb buttons, which makes it less flexible in terms of button placements, and makes the controls awkward for games outside of fighters. The analog stick modules also bring their own problems. Unlike other modular controllers, the analog stick modules are not plug-and-play, requiring you to remap several options across multiple parts of the configuration software, including the LEDs. Even after, it causes some strange behavior with the lights, with certain directions causing them to change colors. As someone experienced with the GP2040CE firmware that hot controllers run on, I was able to set up everything given the included instructions, and even set up configurations with button mappings for each setup so that I could save and reload them anytime that I changed my setup. But that's not something I would expect a regular user to do, especially when the settings need to be changed every single time you swap the modules. Once the analog sticks are configured, the actual process of using them is fine. The analog sticks are the same style as those used in Joy-Cons, with small surface area and low travel distance. They're really nothing more than functional, not useful for anything except for basic operations. The included thumbstick caps help, and using alternative toppers can turn them into more flexible options, but they also kind of exacerbate the problems with the low tension, including the snapback during rapid movements. For games like Smash Bros., Rivals 2, or anything with the emphasis on aiming, they required way too much precision to be a good option for them. For games less dependent, like On Guard or Shadow Generations, it was more manageable. They've also got the disadvantage of having to replace the thumb modules, which makes control schemes a little bit awkward for 3D games. The one unqualified success was rhythm games, where the size of the analog sticks didn't matter, and the leverless controls were a big upgrade over standard controller buttons. The directional modules provide an interesting variety, though I personally don't think we're going to find regular use for all of them. The keyboard style module is the weakest of them as far as I'm concerned, and I found the size and spacing of them too cramped for longer sessions. They might appeal for dyed-in-the-wool PC players though. The arcade button modules are more standard, but they carry over the WASD layout, so you won't be tied to the thumb button for jumping. These are the most comfortable for me, especially after I exchanged them for a lighter switch from the included MX options. And all of these can be adjusted by loosening the screws and rotating them till you get the perfect angle. I haven't really had a problem with the angles on any other leverless, though I could see it being more useful if you're regularly using the keyboard modules. The final option is the recently released arcade stick module, which comes with a low-profile lever, magnetic detachable shaft, multiple gate options, and multiple spring weights. It also comes in close to double the cost of a standard arcade lever, putting it in competition with premium levers like the Famitsu Nobi Bullet lever. The included accessories would drive up the price of a standard lever, to be fair, but I'd argue that they're more of a necessity than an option. To be straight, in its default configuration, the hot lever falls far from the standard of even the cheapest Sanwa or Seimitsu lever, making controlling directions less precise and the feeling closer to something like a D-pad without an adequate pivot, where directional separation is lacking making it easy to get misinputs. Double tapping a direction was enough to consistently give me false diagonals, which was frustrating even in arcade action games, but a death sentence in fighting games. Compared to the longer throw and micro-switch setup of a regular arcade stick, the Hot Stick uses low-profile keyboard switches that sit close to the actuator, so there's very little movement before a switch has contact, and the force and travel needed is reduced. That might initially sound like an advantage, but compared to a traditional setup, that leaves zero room for error. For another visualization, imagine an analog stick with no dead zone, with the sensitivity turned all the way up to max. Thankfully, after replacing the gate with an octo gate, and swapping the spring to the heaviest one included, there's finally enough resistance to decrease those input errors. It didn't completely remove them, but it finally made my inputs consistent and I was pulling off my usual combos and movements. The included linear and silent switches even felt good, since I don't have another silent stick, giving it a pleasant, quiet experience. The arcade stick module also comes with a heavy metal plate that you can use to block off the thumb cluster and add weight, but the arcade stick can also be used with the thumb modules. The arcade stick makes the leftmost button on the thumb module awkward to hit, but otherwise it's fine. Though the analog stick module comes with its caveat that it disables analog emulation, so for instance you wanted to move the arcade stick and use the right stick for camera control, you can't, leaving that big ass arcade stick only available for like changing weapons or using items. This is another limitation of the firmware, but it's another detail that makes the controller's actual usage feel at odds with its promise. As of a recent update to the firmware, you can at least map analog directions directly to the arcade stick, but that'll still leave you without access to the D-pad directionals. The biggest drawback for the HotPad X for me is that switching and combining modules is clunky and finicky, and requires both hardware and software reconfiguration. The process means that I was more likely to find the configuration that I liked and stick with it, rather than switch it up for different games and situations. In my case, it ended up being the combination of the thumb buttons and the arcade stick, which even in their compromised form, gave a unique layout and feeling that combined with the size and weight made it satisfying to use. But that's kind of representative of the problem with the HotPad X in a microcosm. There's a lot of configurations where it feels good, but none of them feel excellent. If I ask myself, is this better than a standalone controller, the answer is almost always no. Even its more unique modules, like the analog sticks and low-profile joysticks, are starting to have some competition that serves those niches better. The HotPad X promises to be everything to everybody, but unless you're indecisive, got money to burn, or just love to mess around with controllers as much as playing with them, you're likely better served by another controller or a pair of them. Now, I am somebody who loves to mess around with controllers, so the portable stick and its modules will probably stick around with me for casual gaming sessions or travel. But for everybody else, I don't think this is going to be the be-all end-all that it promises to be.